Now, on my blog today, I posted something about this book, and I called it Inspiring, Infuriating, and Devastating. And I got an email saying, "What do you mean? I thought you liked this book." And I thought, no, I actually stand by it. Because I do think, well, I don't think the author is any of those things. I like her a lot, and I like her points. I think some of the ideas she forces us to wrestle with, and I think we'll be wrestling with here in subsequent weeks, are this idea that some of the fantasy we've been sold about how relationships work and how men work are pretty infuriating. I think it's a little bit infuriating when you look at the inequality between men and women just in terms of pursuing relationships. As a woman, I've always hated the idea that I was not supposed to call a guy, that I was not supposed to pursue a guy. I just thought, oh, I hate that. I'm a take charge initiator type of person. And I think that worked pretty awfully for me. It doesn't work. That to me is infuriating. And I also think that unless you are in a really good community, dismantling your fantasies about what you hoped life would look like can be devastating. It doesn't have to be. I actually think it's the road to true happiness, but the process can be pretty rocky. And so you need to do it with people, not alone. Now, some of you know my story. I'll sort of summarize it quickly just to give some context of where we're going here. And why I entitled this Conversations about Relationship and Spirituality, and not just conversations about relationships, because I think I had a whole lot of those for years. And I don't know if you've noticed, but anytime women get together, what do we talk about? We talk about boys, and we talk about shoes. So it's winter, which is a lousy time to talk about shoes anywhere in the Boston area, but we can talk about boys. Even from the time I was a little kid, I sensed that God had some role to play in this idea of how we worked out our love lives. And so I just want to put that up here in the front, saying God does have something to say about how we negotiate our romantic lives. And what he says is good and super helpful. And I was the biggest skeptic in the world about how this would work. And so I just feel like it's worth giving a shot. Because I tried it on my own for years and years. And I think for a while it worked really well. I think up through the time I was in college, I was one of those women who just, I had it all together. I was Phi Beta Kappa in college. I was the first kid in my class to get into law school. I was engaged to a really hot guy, really great guy, like he was my type, and he gave me a nice ring. And it just looked, I remember looking around saying, like, people say life is hard. I don't understand what they mean by that. And then my senior year, it all fell apart. So my hunky fiance cheated on me, and so we didn't get married. And then someone I was very close with went to federal prison on drug charges, which brought my legal career, sort of brought that up for question. And then I went off to law school and realized I hated it. Like, I could do it, but you know how you can do some things and you actually don't like them? And I kind of came to the end of myself, and I thought, wow, I am 24 years old, and I don't want to get out of bed in the morning. What is the deal with that? And so I went back to this time when I was a little kid, and I thought, well, what if God has something to say about that? And so I did, I think, what everybody does when they're looking for spiritual guidance. I watched Oprah, and I walked through the New Age section of Barnes & Noble. And I found this author who looked totally like someone I wanted to connect with. She had on this like cute suit, and she had a good sense of humor, and she was talking about how only the love is real, and all that stuff like jealousy and men not calling, we shouldn't let that bother us or hold us down because we are women, we have great things to offer the universe. And I thought, I'm a woman, I have great things to offer the universe. I thought it was just fantastic. And so I ran out and I bought her books, and I did the meditations, and I bought the book, the spiritual book her stuff was based on, and I did all of that. And it worked okay. I think it worked for as long as I was reading her stuff. I thought like, oh, okay, I can do this. This is fine. But the minute I didn't have the book in front of me, I went back to just being me. And so if a guy didn't call, I was still disappointed. And if a guy I liked went out with another woman, it still broke my heart. And I couldn't seem to make my life work. But I thought it was because I wasn't evolved enough. And so I went back to Barnes & Noble, and I started doing astrology, which was interesting. It would give me all this, it told me what guys not to date. I had like a download of information about guys in the back of my head. And so if you're born in December, I thought, well, I'm not going to date you because we will clash. Like, your fire sign and my water will not work together. And I actually thought this. I would stand in bars and be like, oh, sorry, we shouldn't chat. Bye. And I thought this was a great system to negotiate life. And the other thing I did was this program you might have heard of. It's this sort of based on this Chinese spiritual belief about feng shui.
Oh.
And so I would organize all the furniture in my bedroom and my apartment, as much as my roommate would let me get away with it, to optimize the maximum flow of qi through the room. And I remember at one point when my roommate was really into feng shui, I brought home this fishbowl and I put it down and she walked in and she wigged out and I was like, what? And she goes, it's activating our childbearing corner. And we were two single girls went out on dates and we thought like, okay, don't activate the childbearing corner. This was, so on the outside I looked like this together lawyer, and inside I'm like moving my fish bowls around to like, you know, activate my loved corner and my fame corner and all of this. Now feng shui was fun because, you know, God and decorating, what could be better? There were two downsides. One, it put you in a constant state of terror because any point coming at you is bad qi or bad feng shui. And so like the corner of Jamie's laptop there is sort of pointing in my direction. That could hurt me. And so I'd sort of have to put up a block very subtly so that it would block. Or I had like a mirror behind my toilet because it was deflecting stuff being flushed. Yeah. You look back and you just think, really? This is how you're spending your time? But I'll tell you what, it kept me busy. And it made me feel like I was getting closer and closer to the romantic happiness I wanted. And so I'd go to bed and I'd thank the universe that it was bringing me men, that it was bringing me all, you know, it was bringing me romance and dates. And it did. The problem is there didn't seem to be any quality control. So I think all this stuff, there's spiritual power in the world. It's not that it doesn't work. I definitely had more dates in that segment of time than probably any other period of my life. I dated a Unitarian minister who came out of the closet on our first date. I dated an emergency room doctor who would ask me about my bodily functions at cocktail parties in a loud voice. And then I dated a guy who I found out slowly, you know, some guys don't tell you everything about themselves at first. This guy was really cute, had these burning blue eyes, and it turns out he lived with his parents, was unemployed, and had 2 DWI convictions, and so had lost his driver's license. And by this point, I'd so lost confidence in myself that my response to this was, oh well, I've got a car, I don't mind driving. Like, what was wrong with me? I had lost all sense. I really truly believed what I joked before, like, well, if the universe sent him, he must be for me. Not even thinking that, well, maybe God, if God is real, would want me to have a little, maybe a guy who drives. Maybe a guy who has some form of employment or is not in his late 20s and living with his parents. Like, that shouldn't be too much to ask. So I've been doing this for about 5 years, and I saw a thing on this mentor, this woman I like so much. I saw a thing on her website saying she was leading a pilgrimage to ancient Greece, and I thought, oh, I can go on that and I'll find out how she does this stuff. Long story short, I went on this trip as her assistant because I didn't have any money. Got a job as her assistant, went on the trip, became the head of her political nonprofit. We were going to be a liberal version of the Christian Coalition. It was amazing. I was traveling with her, meeting all the New Age bigwigs, all the people on my bookshelf. And on the one hand, it was totally exciting and glamorous and a dream come true. And on the other hand, my life was still a wreck. My romantic life was just going worse and worse and worse. And their lives didn't seem to be any better. And the one thing that really jumped out at me as I looked at their marriages, for those of them who were married, was that they all had this idea of open marriage, and that your wedding vows didn't matter, and that you should sort of wash your wedding rings down a river or something, and you stayed married for as long as it suited you both. And I just thought, you know, outside I'd be all evolved and cool, and be like, oh, and inside I'd be like, no way! I did not want to share a husband, I wanted a husband of my own. And I just couldn't imagine that somehow I'd landed in a world where I was shooting to maybe share a guy. Like, how did I get there? You know, when you're a little girl playing with your Barbie, like waiting for Ken, I didn't have a Ken doll, so I would wait for Ken to show up. It never occurred to me I'd have to share him someday, that there wouldn't be a Ken doll just for me.